I think that's what really attracts us to a lot of our co-sponsors, is that we have the experience and are kind of on the forefront of being able to tailor those relationships to each unique property and deal structure.
What's the number one secret to creating win-win partnerships? And let's start with the sponsors, right? Making sure that they're aligned in leadership, and then we'll move into the investor.
Yeah, I would say it's being deliberate yet flexible. And I'll clarify what I mean by that. But I think that's where my team at Symphony Capital Group has really stood out, is that we have a pretty structured approach for the most part, where we're able to move quickly with newer sponsors that are newer relationships for ourselves. And when you think about how complex and intricate putting together a successful acquisition or sponsorship team looks like, from the deal sourcing, due diligence, closing, and then ultimately property operations aspect, as much as of that as you can have pre-planned, pre-templated, put up on rails, so that you can customize and configure on the fly to the extent needed, is really, really critical. So we try to drive that process. And I think that's what really attracts us to a lot of our co-sponsors, is that we have the experience and are kind of on the forefront of being able to tailor those relationships to each unique property and deal structure.
Okay. So talk about your value proposition to like the leadership team and the GP side. And then also, generally speaking, what are the 1, 2, or 3 roles that are involved in these GP deals for commercial real estate syndications?
Yeah, for sure. So, a lot of folks kind of assume that we just jump in at the end on the capital raise side and fill in capital gaps on a deal that's pretty far down the line. That's really not what we're into or what our approach is. We want to develop the relationship up front, even preferably before a deal is even being pursued directly. So pre-LOI phase, while deals still listed or still being analyzed. Part of that reason is because we really excel on the underwriting aspect, given the makeup of our team at Symphony Capital Group. So not only on the property level underwriting, but also on the syndication and waterfall structure underwriting as well. So we do a really good job of staying on top of the markets that we pursue in terms of what all those different factors are when you get into rent growth and entry, exit cap rates, LTV with certain regional lenders, all that good stuff. And then ultimately reverse engineering what a competitive return needs to look like to an investor, whether it's an individual or a private equity group, and then reverse engineering what the rest of the returns and the ultimate offer price needs to look like in that regard. So I think based on our experience, we bring a lot of value to some local sponsors who maybe don't necessarily have that level of complexity into the prior deals that they've closed in a given market.
Okay, let's talk about kind of the 3, a general ownership of a property. Let's say it's a $10 million deal, keep it simple, and it's an apartment complex. And I've heard a general one framework is a third for the capital raise, like who's bringing in the capital, a third for the general partnership, who's running the entire, all the deal, all the operations, all the, the financing, the sourcing, all of it, right? The business side of things. And the third is like a key principal. Is that generally how you guys are structuring ownership and making things equitable?
Yeah, those are some of the larger buckets. We go a little bit more granular than that, and I think that's another thing that helps us stand out, is that we really have the true, based on our experience of actually doing it, the true key roles and responsibilities mapped out at a more detailed level. But for the most part, yeah, you're going to be looking at on the acquisition side, compensating for the person that found the deal or fostered the deal to even get to the LOI or best and final phase, PSA phase. And then you're going to need to structure your KP, loan guarantor, person who's putting up at-risk capital like earnest money or inspection fees, things like that, and compensate them accordingly. And then thinking down the road, you need to have a carve out for who's going to be doing the asset management on the GP side. So typically that's the person or persons who are overseeing the local property management team and making sure that the business plans being executed towards making sure that the CapEx budget for renovations is being managed and not overrun, that type of thing. And then another component that we throw in is syndication and investor management. So making sure that you're staying in regular communications with your investors, keeping them updated on the execution of the business plan, answering any questions that come in, and managing that process as well. That's something that gets overlooked because folks are so focused on the acquisition and deal sourcing side these days that sometimes they don't think it far enough down the road, but that's something that we focus on.
Yeah, it makes sense.